Today on Dry Curl Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between the Crate Blue Voodoo BV120H and the Marshall JCM 800 2203X. Now, I would like to reiterate here that this is a high gain amp shootout. That's why it's titled that way. So you're not going to hear any cleans or any breakups. It's just high gain geared towards metal. I'd also like to note that both amps are boosted by an Ibanez TS9. But I do have two sound samples for you today, the first of which is a somewhat balanced EQ type setting in drop B. Then we move on to a more scooped type setting in drop C. Alright, so there you go. There are the 2 sound samples. 2, not 4. 2 sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the Crate Blue Voodoo BV120H. Yes, I know, you're very smart when you call it the Blue Doo-Doo. It's just grow up. And the Marshall JCM 800 2203X. The X stands for reissue. So it is at this point in the video where I kind of like to go over what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. And I already know, depending on how you listen to it and what you're listening for, a lot of people are going to say that they sound exactly the same, whereas the rest of us are going to actually hear differences. I know it's a YouTube video, so there's a lot of compression, choices that I've made in the video as far as like EQ type settings and such, but they just don't sound the same. They sound somewhat similar. But the Blue Voodoo it does not get the mids correct, I guess you would say. It's also an amp that you cannot bring the treble up past noon, otherwise it starts to sound shrill. I know, I've heard ever since like 94, the genius way, if you have a really cheap amp and you want it to sound better, you get an MXR 10-band EQ, and like I know that's going to be in the comments because people just think that they're the only ones that know that. But these videos are not about adding an EQ to an amp. That kind of takes away from the amp. I'll only use like a boost or a wah on a lead, just because that's a typical thing to do for high gain, especially when it comes to that right there. But I know I have heard through some comments that some people say that the Crate Blue Voodoo is a JCM 800 clone. Which, I mean, if you believe that, or you want to believe that, then more than likely you're going to hear that they sound exactly the same. Versus, again, most other people, which they will definitely hear quite a bit of difference in between the two. Again, when it comes to a lot of high gain amps, you're either going to hear, like if one's an American amp, one's a British amp, you'll hear those major differences. But a lot of subtleties are what make up a lot of the differences in these high gain amps, and just the JCM 800. I'll flat out say I don't like a JCM 800 doubled. It doesn't have enough. It's not a high gain amp. You really have to push it. But paired with another high gain amp, that's where the JCM 800 really comes in. But again, both of these amps, the Blue Voodoo, I like it. I think it's a great amp. It definitely has a heck of a lot more gain than the JCM 800. But if you're gonna say that it sounds the same or it's it's just not. It makes no sense to say that. But again, both amps I do find value in. I mean, this you're definitely going to get a heck of a lot cheaper than you're going to get this. But especially in a studio scenario, you'll be able to find uses for both. I find both of these, they work really well with a Strat, with a little bit of gain. Just in high gain scenarios, the JCM 800 just paired with an actual high gain amp is really where its benefit is. But like in a high gain scenario, but both of these amps, I just think they perform a heck of a lot better when they're not in a high gain scenario. But that's all I really have to say, and I know there's going to be blue doo-doo comments, which again was, as I've said in previous videos, that was in relation to the initial logo of the Blue Voodoo. It looked like poop, but People from there on call it the blue doo-doo, and the same people that call the dual rectifier the dual rectifier and laugh for like 10 minutes straight. Thanks for watching.